I think one of the things that comes up in the Stan Romanet case, and I mentioned it a couple of instances in the book, there's one bit where he's having a party, with his family and friends, and then there's like this little blonde-haired girl materialises in the garden.
Yeah.
And he goes out and tries to speak to her or something, and it's like when you read it and you read the details and how he's written it, it's a bit like it's a bit like one of the experiences you were describing. It's like for a few minutes or half an hour, he'd gone into another reality.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, why would this girl be there? What? And then why did he go and say those things to her in that way? He asked her all the wrong questions, and where did she go? What was it all about? What was the meaning of that? So you then draw, and this is what happens in the abduction cases. You get drawn into this other reality, which doesn't. And you're thinking, well, it must be rubbish because it doesn't make sense. But you can't say that. You can't say that. So it is an area when you look at the alien abductions and you read enough of them. You begin to open up to this idea that there are different realities that can impinge on our reality.
Absolutely.
And any rules, like science rules or rules of logic, that you try and apply, they just don't work.
They don't work.
They just don't work.
Don't work.
So what can you do? I'm a very analytical person. That was been a big part of my job and what I do. So I've just said, well, I've kind of taken the view, well, I'll analyse this as much as I can, but I also realise that analytical process has its limits. Yeah. Sometimes you can't go anywhere with it, so you just have to sort of put it there and leave it, which is what I've essentially done. But then what we were talking about before was the DMT, and as Johnny brought up and I mentioned the Rick Strassman research, because if you read the Rick Strassman book, The Spirit Molecule, there's a section in that, I think it's towards the end, I quote it in the book, where he said that he started reading some of the alien abduction experiences, perhaps when they'd come out in the in the 70s and 80s, and maybe he'd even read Whitley Strieber's book. I can't remember because that came out in 1988, I think. And the Spirit Molecule study, or the studies that he did for that, were done in 92 onwards. But he says that some of the DMT-induced experiences where people were just lying there, in the hospital where he was working, he'd given them 40 milligrams of DMT intravenously, I think. I don't think he gave it orally, or they didn't smoke it.
No.
And they described alien abduction experiences almost, to the letter kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So he wondered what that was about, And then I mentioned in the book, let's just say, for example, you've got some type of black helicopter that comes down from the military, and they manage to get into somebody's house somehow, either with some advanced technology of some kind, and then they're able to inject somebody with DMT. Is that, if they inject somebody with DMT, is that part of the alien abduction experience that they then report the next day? Don't know. It might be some modified form of DMT that the military uses.
Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Maybe. That was just an idea that I'd not heard put out there before. Yeah. But then I'm not saying that explains the abduction, because of course we've got these accounts from people that say that they're sitting in the chair, they're watching TV, the next minute they're on a bed, have the sensation literally physically going through the ceiling.
Yeah.
And there's another guy called Steve Jones, not Steve Nee Jones, the physicist, but the Steve Jones guy, and he did an interesting talk at the Exopolitics group at the conference, in Anthony Beckett's conference. I think it was probably 2013, 2014, and he talked about being in his bed and again being literally being physically going through the window pane, being teleported through it or not. The window pane was that he was able to travel through it without breaking it, basically.
To get vibrated?
Something like that. Yeah. And then you've got these reports of there being stains on the ceiling, where the people have gone up. I don't know what to make of those. I've not been to a scene and actually seen it the day before and then the day after, sort of thing, and checked and see if somebody's reached up to the ceiling and painted something on it. I've not been to all of that length. But these are all phenomena that people report, and so you can't just give it one explanation, I don't think. And I do think the military are involved in it, heavily involved in it. They probably have their own agenda with it, and they're putting their own spin on it. And I do think, well, I'm pretty convinced that aliens not from this planet are involved as well. But, you know, what case it, well, I think Travis Walton case, for example, is pretty clear cut that was some type of Nordic aliens or something, whatever you want to call them, human looking ones, two groups working together. That was accidental, that wasn't intentional. They did try and help him, and that was rather different to most of the other experiences that you have.
But was it where UFO sightings are? There was a lot of black helicopters turn up on military.
Yeah.
You know, it's standard, isn't it, for a lot of it?
Yeah, and it appears that people do get harassed, and they have these weird things happening to them. People getting followed, knocks on the door, strange people turning up at their house, doing strange things. And I think I heard, again going back to the George Nuri thing, I think it was a Brad Steiger. I think he was on one night and somebody called in and they described that they're driving, to see relatives in the States, and they see a craft, and then all of a sudden there's nobody on the road. They stop at a gas station, and it's just like this. They know there's something weird about this gas station, but they can't quite say what it is. And then it comes out that Brad Steiger says, "Well, I think they created that for you to experience, and you went into that simulation or that reality, and you're back to that again." And so I do wonder about that, and I think again that's a possibility if you've got.
That's the thing, is it's like it's always tantalisingly close, like what I said earlier, where what I think about being a simulation, we're always just that out of reach.
Well, many times, I sort of slightly disagree. I don't think it's like that all the time, but I think that the way I would interpret my take on that is that once you get on a quest, you are on a journey, and I think all of us make a decision at some point to start that journey.
Totally.
And I think it's that. Maybe some things, you do get into reach and you are able to grasp them and hold them, but there is always something else that's you might want to get towards, and it's not quite out of reach, and that is maybe part of the process. It's part of this growing and learning and understanding and consciousness building program, which is part of the way the universe works.
I work like that is because I haven't really got a academic background, or I haven't. So I haven't got no university education. So I'm looking at it probably from a more simplistic manner.
Right.
I don't have
probably an advantage not having it.
It can be. I think it can be sometimes.
The thing I take, especially when I listen to Gary Heseltine, is he says you've got to follow the evidence wherever it takes you. If it destroys your belief in everything you hold dearly, well, that's the truth, and the evidence. That's the evidence.
Yeah, I agree.
I
agree.
So, but it just seems to me that everything, whether it be the pyramids.
And what I'll say though is that the people who often say what you just said often don't take their own advice.
No, I know. Of course they don't.
And Jim Fetzer is a prime example of that. And I wrote about that in my 9/11 Finding the Truth book, 9/11 Finding the Truth book, going back a few years. So I think when people say that, you got to follow the evidence. Sometimes they don't actually follow their own advice, do they?
No.
Because there are aspects, there's things that you can find out.
Yeah.
That you can't know.
And if you accept that for most of the time you're living in a physical reality which has certain rules, then you can decide whether what you're experiencing and what you're looking at conforms to those rules, which everything else seems to conform to at the time you're experiencing that reality. I suppose is how I looked at it, which is not to say that you can't experience other realities where the rules are different. And people do experience them, and we were just talking about that quite some length, and I don't disregard that at all, and I think it's an important step to realise that those realities exist and can be experienced to one degree or another.
Well, I think when we interviewed Anthony Peake, he talked about they were trying to map DMT land.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's impossible for me. It's because it's an impossibility. It doesn't, from everything I know, it doesn't work like that. It's not like you go, right, I've landed in Norway, let's go and walk around the edge of it. It doesn't. You turn up at a point, you turn up somewhere else the next. It's there ain't no signposts.
No.
You're not asking people. You can't get your compass out.
No.
I mean, I know they've talked about feeding the DMT, so they stay in that state for a elongated period of time. But even then, I don't see how mapping it is a possibility.
No.
But if people are doing the DMT now, and it's becoming quite a thing, isn't it? A lot of people are turning to it.
Because I mean, when you think of mapping, I mean, now there's a phrase that Graham Hancock came out with, that the alert, it talks about the alert and problem-solving state, doesn't it? I mean, I touched on this a while ago in this talk we're doing now, but and then he talks about Graham Hancock talks about the scientific process where you count, weigh, and measure. And when you're in these other realities, it doesn't work like that. Counting and weighing and measuring doesn't have the same meaning and value in those realities as it does in ours.
No.
You know, so this and mapping is accounting. Well, kind of like
it's just trying to reference,
to measuring, and
take our reference points, apply them to a different.
It's not going to work.
Science
no, it's not.
It's upside down there. It does. When you see the things that you see, you understand that you don't know anything.
Yeah.
Our way of thinking, physics, science, biology, you know.
It only works here.
Only works here on
so
this
useful
physical reality where gravity exists. When you see a man fly above your head, how is he doing that without a jetpack? It doesn't work.
So you have to realise that there's other things going on which you need to learn about if you want to kind of, you know, integrate that into your consciousness.
Which is what we talked about earlier. You know, if you once you see that, a lot of people will argue the toss and go, it's just hallucination, it's just your brain playing this. It may well be, but it would mean that every person who did it had the greatest mind and the capacity for thinking and learning. Going along the idea that we barely use our brain's capacity. If that's true, then I'm the cleverest fella that ever walked. You know, because if I could tap into that and draw and design the things that you see, it'd be like we'd be on a we're on a totally different level. That's the whole point that we're having it. We're on this three-dimensional.
I think society just wants to lock us into just one sort of consciousness, and that analytical problem-solving thing, and not explore any other ones. They don't want that.
No, that's right.
And that's for us. We're just exploring. We're now wanting to explore more consciousness, but so we're kind of going against.
I think that is the secret of.
And I think, you know,
isn't it?
Going back to the sort of topic a little bit, I think once you get into the UFO alien stuff, that is one doorway into opening it out into these other realities, and of course, you know, transcendental experiences with DMT and with psychedelic drugs. They're another way of and you start to see that these realms are connected. There are pathways that can lead you into this higher consciousness, higher vibration, call it what you want to, you know. And then again, you know, looking at things like ancient civilizations where it's clear they knew other stuff that which they had they had something going on in their culture which we don't have, which allowed them to do things that we can't do. You know, and it's something to do with what we've been talking about.
Graham Hancock itself says the same thing, doesn't he? DMT is the key to everything. But like we talked about in the kitchen where we didn't have the cameras on, that's why it's illegal.
Because
that's why it's demonised. LSD, mushrooms, DMT, cannabis, anything, all these plants that can free you, because we're in this societal prison thing that's created this way to keep us depressed and scratching round. If we're even open to the question of scratching round and asking ourselves why. You know, because most people are just programmed to the television, aren't they? You know, and social constraints. Oh, you can't mention that in front of your mum and dad.
You can look at that. I mean, I've also looked at this. I tried to sort of think about it in another way, in terms of, well, let's just say that the way things are on planet Earth now, and all the problems that we have, you know, that we're talking about being repressed consciously and so forth. If we just say that this is like a school, it is a school. You know, and people are incarnating here, and their consciousness is existing here to learn things about what it's like to experience these things that we experience. So let's say you and I, we're working to break that down, you know, and want to break that down so that people can experience other things. One of the things I asked myself a few years ago, we're thinking along those lines, is, I mean, I just thought of an analogy to try and explain it. It's a bit like saying, you know, the local primary school, you think, that local primary school, it's not doing anybody any good. I'll go and burn it down. Is that a good thing to do? Is that justifiable? So in other words, if we as a group want to go around and change this reality so that people are not functioning, that their consciousness changing, is that going to be a good thing? Or are we going to destroy this school? Do you see what I'm saying?
Totally get that,
we might be actually doing more harm than good, because all this shit that we have to live through exists for a reason. Or maybe I'm not saying it does, but maybe it exists for a reason. And if we were to change that too much now, as things stand, maybe that's not a good thing, and that's not allowed to happen.
Or maybe that is part of the game.
Or maybe it is.
That's why we are here.
Maybe we are here to change it, and maybe we are here to learn that in changing it, that we're learning what it's going to be like before and after, kind of thing.
See, I think.
So we don't know, do we?
Yeah, that's right. So I think, from my belief, is that this planet is, because it is. It's set that way. It's by design.
Yeah. I agree.
When we go back to the banking system, and you go, okay, 100 JP Morgan, they set about the cabal. They created this whole structure, the one world. They started the First World War, Second World War, and all the rest of the wars that have gone on, and tightly bound us, and we live in a debt prison. Basically, that's what it's about. Getting you in debt. We understand contract, your birth certificate.
I mean, when you look at all that stuff, I agree. It appears that we are being manipulated and used like cattle.
That's right.
And that appears. I mean, that's what David Icke said. I think we touched on this in other interviews we've done. And I think that does appear that a big part of this reality that we're in, certainly in Western cultures, not so much in the other cultures we talked about, shamanic cultures and stuff. They seem to be operating totally different, don't they, to that model. But it seems
until they get a central bank.
Until they get a central bank, yeah.
And then they're part of the system.
Yeah, they get.
And if you're real against it, then you're Saddam Hussein, aren't you? Or you're Gaddafi. You're the worst guy in the world.
That appears to be the way it's working, doesn't it? Over the last sort of 100 years or so. Yeah.
So then you think, but then if you look at papers from 130 years ago, they had the same problems. They still hate the bosses. They still had no workers' rights. They still didn't have enough food. They still complained about the local council. Everything was shit. It is what it is, and that's what I'm saying. What you talked about there, burning the school down. If everybody suddenly woke up, then what?
What would happen?
It's never going to happen.
No.
Because we're part of the. I'd like to say we're 1%. If we say we're 5% of the population have got an awareness that this isn't all it's cracked up to be. That it isn't, that we are in a slave world thing. Waking up everybody that you know yourself on Facebook. If I've got 130 friends, I've got maybe 6 or 8, 7, 10 people maybe get what I'm talking about. The rest don't even reply.
It's just I agree.
But in a family situation, they might talk and listen. But they won't tell anybody else that they've had this conversation. Let's keep it to ourselves.
Yeah.
We're an exclusive gang, aren't we?
It's a limited consciousness that the society has got, and that's what makes them. Makes it. We understand that. Yeah, it is. It can be a battle,
but then if you put say a picture of Jesus Christ up, you might get 25 amens. They're in, I think, religion's a construct, it's a control mechanism, isn't it?
It's a hierarchy.
That's right. Talked about it earlier. But it's their truth. And it's when it's everything to them. It's not for me to dismantle their belief system, is it?
I think all you can do is show them that there's a choice, but they may not want to see what you show them, or not listen to what you tell them. So.
But then we can go back to. Am I just a bit further down the line on my conscious journey, and I'm ready? Maybe I've had 5 lifetimes of being in denial.
You don't know, do you? Do you want to go ask any other on the questions on the list, or do the Ask Andrew thing or anything? I'm sort of conscious of time.
Quick on to
time's just a constant,
I know.
Yeah,
I'm conscious of time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something I see what did
Just a drum roll. I want to touch on the video evidence that's you brought up in your book. There's quite a few the victim.
Yes.
Very interesting, very compelling.
Yeah. And I mean, again, that sort of partly ties back to, again, what we were talking about. But in the book, I mentioned some of the people say, "Oh, there's no photos of aliens. Where's the photos? Where's the videos? There's no videos of any landings. No videos of any flights. No blah blah blah." Well, actually, there could well be. Certainly, in the cases of landings, there've been landings. And in one of the really intriguing videos which I saw originally, probably 2004, 2005, was this alien interview from 1997 with Victor. Again, it's on the internet, you can watch it. Andrew Burlington's got this channel called The Alien Interview, and he studies this in great detail. It's about 2 minutes of film, very boring. It appears to be an alien coughing behind the screen, and some medics come in and shine a light in the alien's eyes, and there is allegedly telepathic communication going on between somebody with a military badge on their uniform and the alien. There's a heart monitor going up and down on the screen there. And it's one of those things, you look at this a bit like you were saying earlier, is it real? Is it not real? You kind of want to reach out and say, yes, this is it, this is the proof. And I watched the original video. It's about an hour long. You get a bit of background information, which is quite interesting. The guy who presented this video is quite bullish about it. Victor, he had this name Victor, his voice was disguised, and he's clearly very articulate. He appears to know, a lot of stuff. He describes the video, he describes how he got it. He says that he had an opportunity to copy it when it was being archived. He said it was shot, I think, in the early 90s, probably around 1995, in other words about 2 years before it came out, or a year before. And he said that the alien in it would probably died, since as far as he knew it had died after this was quite near to the end, because apparently these things, he implied, although he didn't openly state, that the aliens die after a period of time. They can't live very long for whatever reason. He didn't elucidate on that, and he basically says, well, look, prove this is fake. And then he actually he had a comeback 10 years later. He reappeared in 2008, and he said that he was disgusted because he said that he gave this to the UFO research community, or whatever you want to call it, the UFO alien research, and he says, well, nobody really bothered to try and work out where it came from, try and work out, do due diligence on it. He said that what they did wasn't good enough, and he said that people didn't really, have a grasp of what they were dealing with, and he was quite critical of the UFO research community, and I tend to agree with him on that.
It's been 11 years since I brought out that tape. What follow-up has there been? Who among these so-called ufologists, these self-proclaimed investigators, show me one of them that's demanded information about S4 under the Freedom of Information Act. Show me one of them that has seriously attempted to confirm or deny the existence of the alien interview program. All they care about is talking among themselves and making videotapes, making documentaries, promoting themselves.
Do you at least feel vindicated that no one has conclusively debunked the tape?
But the only vindication that I could imagine would be if the government finally revealed all that they know about these aliens.
So are you saying that the internet truth seekers are not living up to your expectations?
That is an understatement.
I think that film, based on what he said and the way it was presented, he did say, yes, I did it for money. I came out and I wanted to make some money out of it, and he was quite frank about that. And he agreed that there was only certain things he would discuss, I think that is a video just purported as it was to be, and that it was a video of an alien that had been kept in captivity, possibly from a crash that happened in the Kalahari Desert in South Africa. That there was a suggestion made in the Alien Interview film that's where it had come from, and that was a case that was brought to the attention of Tony Dodd, the UFO investigator. I mentioned that in the book. So I met Tony Dodd many moons ago. It's sadly no longer with us. And so again, my sort of gut feeling of that was it could well be real. And I felt that from what Victor says, it was what he was presenting and what he saw to be an honest record. Was he given that video as disinformation? Maybe. But it was a bit weird. An alien coffin. The alien wasn't really giving a message. It wasn't trying to foretell the end of the world particularly, although he did in 2008. He sort of went down that road a little bit, which I mentioned in the book, because I'm always a bit wary of these end of the world predictions. I'm right, you know, quite wary about that, because that's happened a few times with a lot of the contactees. I mean, I even read one that said that the world was going to end in 1956. You know, that was in the Wilbert Smith material. That was one of the channeled messages that came through. So I'm always suspicious of those now. And same with Victor, he was doing that in 2008, saying don't plan for a 20th anniversary of the alien interview. And of course, we're 22 years on from the alien interview now. But what came out of that, as well as when I did the interview with Richard a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about this, I think, earlier on this afternoon, was that somebody reminded me of this Skinny Bob video, which again was of an alleged alien captured, and it was some film from the KGB archives. And you think, yeah, you know, KGB, that's all very convenient. It's probably just made up. Somebody made up. But I saw this video, and it was released only in 2011, and so fairly you know, recent. And I saw this, and I thought, well, you know, a bit like the alien interview. I thought, you know, maybe. And then I studied it more, and it actually turns out this person that released it released 4 videos over a period of about 5 weeks. And I did some research into this in the last week, a Skinny Bob video, and I made a little video of it. And it's quite interesting, because not only does it show this captured alien, it shows a flying saucer at fairly close range, both filmed from the ground, either from a boat or a train or car or truck or something, and it's tracked. And then it shows a crash site for only like, you know, a few seconds. Then it shows an alien body lying on the ground, which is quite indistinct, but it does look like that's what it is. Then it shows the alien in captivity, and he's got like they're measuring its height, so you can see that's what it looks like to me. He's got this little bar impinged on the top of his head, which to all the world, to me, looks like a height measurement. You see it pan up the body, and it's got 3 fingers and a thumb, long fingers, bulbous head, sort of like a grey, but not quite your sort of typical one. And then he released another clip, a third clip, which he called the family outing, where there were these 4 or 5 aliens just walking along, and very shaky, quite blurred. There are a couple of still frames which are quite clear. And is it hoax? Well, again, if you read what the guy put out, he has a reaction very much like Victor. If you read his comments, and I put this in this article I wrote, it's not in the book because it came out after, I was made aware of this after the book came out. And on balance, when I looked at that, I thought, yes, this is probably real. I think it did come out of the KGB archives, and as I then came across this documentary, which again it's 20 years old, but I'd never seen it. Roger Moore fronts this documentary called The Secret KGB Archives, and the centrepiece of that documentary is this alleged film, which many people might have seen, of a disc which is crashed into the ground and it's sticking out the ground, and it's surrounded by people in trench coats and, you know, these, what do they call those hats, those winter hats, I forget, there's a special
bearskins,
bearskins, that's it, like that. And they've got, and they have, and the thing I wasn't aware of in this Roger Moore documentary, they had somebody looking at the film, they got them to look at the film they said was authentic, the film canisters looked authentic, the uniforms were correct, the Kalashnikov rifles were correct. So from what they could tell, the film, it married up, it didn't look like it was made for a film. They got documents on the black market which supported what was stated in the film, and the incident was said to have happened in, I think, autumn 1968 or 69, I forget the exact year. very interesting. So when I saw this KGB film, and I think, and they actually did a secret filming where they got some documents on the black market, and this guy wanted 10,000 probably rubles, I think is the Russian currency, and that appears to be a real scene. I don't think that was staged for the documentary. I think this was a real scene. They were haggling with somebody. They, paid him off for these documents. And as they said, when the Soviet Union collapsed, it would not surprise me at all that some of that classified information was sold on the black market to the highest bidder. Yeah. So I think the whole thing...
It was always fair game, wasn't it, when the war came down?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe for a couple of years before all the new people came in and things were rejigged and put back under control, I think it there would have been a time when such documents could have been sold for a high price to people who wanted them. And it wouldn't surprise me that the NSA and the CIA were in there like a shot, sweeping up whatever they could get with their own agents. Yeah. That wasn't said in the Roger Moore documentary, but that's got to have happened really. They've got to have done it. And then linking that to the Skinny Bob, which isn't in the Roger Moore documentary. The Skinny Bob stuff came out in 2011, and the Roger Moore documentary 12 years earlier. But I think you can see this thing has definitely got the KGB logo in it. Again, I think that is probably a real piece of film. I do think that means they have physically captured aliens from craft. They've done whatever with them. They've interviewed them and got information out of them. And there have been accounts, going back to what we were saying, from some of these alien interviews and so forth, and it came up in the Alien Interview 1997. They talked about human bodies being vessels, and that I don't know. And it was interesting because if you watch the 1997 Alien Interview documentary, they have a little dramatised scene with an alien. Then the narrative is talking about what the alien is telling them, and that human bodies are really vessels, and you have a soul and things, just the sorts of things we were saying earlier on. But Victor doesn't say that. That comes out in the narrative, so there must have been other information that Victor passed to them in the documentary makers, or maybe, I don't know, maybe they got it from somewhere else. But again, that's quite interesting because again, that ties up with exactly what we've been talking about. Yeah, it's come from rather a different source, And Wilbert Smith said, going back to, and I'm going to mention that in the book, he said that the people that he was talking to, the boys topside that he was in communication with, he said that we come here, as in human beings, come here to participate in certain events, and there are certain sequences of events which must not be changed. And of course, some of this comes out, with near-death experiences, doesn't it, Paul? We've talked about this, and I don't think Smith ever had a near-death experience, at least not at that time. And he said that the boys topside, they had a better idea about what this set of events, why it was like that, and they said they had a better idea of how that worked than most human beings did, because they were on a sort of slightly higher level. And I mentioned some of that in the book as well. So it is important to consider consciousness, to consider the ideas of why we're here, why they're here, and I think you can't escape that in talking about the alien phenomenon and the abduction phenomenon. And I think it goes, I think I said in one of the other interviews, it's right across the board. It's not, you're not just dealing with little green men, greys in physical craft, landing, taking samples, talking to people, shaking hands, abducting them. There's all that, but there's other stuff as well. And I think there are these ranges of physicality, so you can have astral beings as well that come here in maybe not so solid craft, or they're able to travel here in an astral sense, and they may be entirely astral and we only encounter them in a dream state or under a psychedelic drug, we only encounter them then, or they can be intermediate to that. You may be able to communicate with them just while you're sat in the chair watching TV telepathically. You don't have to go into an astral projected state. I think all of that, it happens at all levels. It's not just one thing or the other. I think that's, if you read all the different types of accounts, that's what those accounts show. And it's not just demons. I think a religious paradigm is not much use really. You can't say, oh yeah, it's just demons turning you away from God.
No.
It's just, that's just too simplistic to me.
But how does that settle with you, with your analytical mind and your quest for solid evidence? You have to have a leap of faith, don't you?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I think it's, I'd say, not so much faith, but it's a leap of having looked at a lot of different accounts. So I don't really call that faith. I would call it a leap of understanding. You know,
Okay.
a leap of. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't call it faith. That's not quite the right word.
Where the conclusions are more likely.
Yeah, it's a leap. It's a leap to
So
say,
probability.
The probability
a leap
is
of
more higher
probability,
than-
perhaps
yeah.
more. Yeah, it's perhaps what I would say that, you know, that looks like what it is from everything that I've looked
See,
at.
what you do is you look at everything, and then you look for a pattern, you look for a correlation,
Yeah.
and then the overview is, yes,
That's
we're
what's
leaning
going
more
on.
towards that.
Yeah, that's basically why I do it.
Yeah.
And
I totally agree. You know, it's easier for me to have intuitive feeling towards and be drawn that way. I don't say fall for everything because that's.
but you know, some of it. I mean, again, I've never had any particularly strong experiences. I mean, you were talking about your experiences, pretty powerful stuff. I haven't had that, you see, so that's why I looked at it from the sort of more overview, observer, analytical perspective, and you're certainly looking at it from something of an experiential you know, situation as well, and as are other people, as are the abductees and the contactees. I think it's disrespectful to deny their experience in many cases. You know, in all cases, I know some people make stuff up, and yes, there are these attention seekers. Yes, there are people that make stuff up. They've made a fast buck on the UFO scene and disappeared. Yes, again, those people exist. You know, and I could probably sit down and write names of a few of them if I really thought about it.
But you can fathom them out pretty much.
I think once you've read more and more of the accounts, you know, and you, like you say, use your intuition, you think, that's not. I don't think they're telling the truth. You know.
That's it.
You know.
That's it. When you hear Bob the Builder or Bob the Plumber from Wakefield telling about one wet Sunday morning, he was just going to work and all of a sudden the UFO was there. He didn't ask for this.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got nothing to gain. You've got everything to lose.
You look at the context
Credibility.
of,
That's right. That's when you know.
Yeah. I mean, Alan Godfrey's a good example of that as well. I haven't mentioned him up to now in his case. I do mention his case in the book as well. You won't get a more down-to-earth guy than Alan Godfrey. You know, totally salt-of-the-earth guy, you know, totally honest. And he doesn't even say he was abducted. He just says, you know, he was hypnotised. That's the story he told, but he doesn't know whether it's true or not. He just says that he's got a period of time that he can't remember what happened, and he saw the graft, and then he was in the car, you know, 5 minutes later, whatever it was, driving. That's all he says that he knows is true. You know, so, you know.
Wow, well, it's a good place to wrap up. It's been brilliant. We've sort of gone to a lot of different areas there.
Yeah.
Probably more than it. No, it's good. No, it's
That's all right. No, I don't have anything wrong with that.
Excellent.
I don't have an axe to grind of what to talk about. You know.
Yeah, I think it was really good, you know, that we did that, you know. So, yes, excellent. Thank you very much, Andrew.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And
Cheers, Andrew.
yes, until next time. Bye-bye.